They knew they should turn back, but they didn't. Just a few hundred meters from the summit, their oxygen was running out. Their bodies were shutting down, and every step forward was a step closer to death. The wind didn't start as a storm. It was slow, almost silent, a quiet breath in the highest place on Earth, just enough to go unnoticed. At 8,000 meters, no one is supposed to stay long. This is not a place for humans, because up there, your body doesn't adapt. It begins to fail. They had already crossed the invisible line, the point climbers call the death zone. Above this altitude, there is not enough oxygen to sustain life. Every breath is a struggle. Every step burns energy the body cannot replace. The mind slows down. Decisions become clouded. You are in a race against your own biology. Weeks earlier, this was just a dream bought and paid for. The ultimate challenge, to stand on top of the world. It was another commercial expedition, guided, planned, controlled. People paid tens of thousands of dollars to be here. For some, it was the culmination of a life's ambition. For others, a prize to be won. But Everest doesn't care who you are. It doesn't care what you paid or what you promised. They started from base camp, a city of colorful tents in a world of gray rock and white ice. The journey began slowly, carefully, one step at a time, letting their bodies adjust to the thinner air. They navigated the Khumbu Icefall, a chaotic, frozen river of shifting ice towers, some as large as buildings. A place where the mountain is alive, groaning and cracking beneath your feet. They crossed deep crevasses on shaky aluminum ladders. A first test of nerve. Camp 2, Camp 3. Each step higher, a little less oxygen, a little less strength, a little less clarity. By the time they reached Camp 4, everything changed. Perched high on a windswept plateau, it is the last stop before the summit, the last place that offers any illusion of safety. That's where time starts running out, because above that point, you are no longer climbing, you are surviving. The plan was simple, a rule written in the deaths of those who came before. Leave camp in the middle of the night, reach the summit by midday, and turn back before 2 p.m. No exceptions. Because the mountain is always waiting to change its mind. But mountains don't follow plans, and neither do people. That morning, May 10th, 1996, the weather was perfect. Deceptively so. Multiple teams were moving at once, more climbers than usual, all chasing the same singular moment, the summit. But something was already wrong. They just didn't see it yet. They weren't all inexperienced. The guides, Rob Hall and Scott Fisher, were legends, some of the best in the world. Most of the clients had trained for this, prepared for months, some for years. But Everest isn't climbed with strength alone. It's climbed with decisions. And on that day, the wrong ones started to stack, one on top of the other, like stones building a tomb. Higher on the mountain, a delay that shouldn't have happened changed everything. The fixed ropes, the lifelines that guide climbers through the most dangerous sections, weren't ready. They hadn't been installed by the advanced teams. At over 8,000 meters, in the freezing darkness, the climbers had to stop and wait, helpless, motionless. Minutes passed, then more, an hour. And every minute spent waiting up there comes with a terrible cost. The cold begins to burn. It steals warmth from your bones. The body keeps losing strength, even when standing still. The precious bottled oxygen keeps dropping, hiss by hiss. You are a statue, leaking life into the thin air. And the clock doesn't stop. More climbers arrived from below, one behind the other. a traffic jam started to form. At the highest mountain on Earth, people were standing still in a line, waiting, exposed, no protection, no shelter, no margin for error. Some knew it was wrong. They could feel it, the cold, the lost time, the burning in their lungs. But no one wanted to be the first to turn back, because turning back means accepting you won't reach the summit. And for many of them, that was everything. It was the reason they had sacrificed so much, the reason they had pushed their bodies to the absolute limit. And now they were close, closer than they had ever been. So they stayed and kept going, higher, slower, weaker. By the time they reached the Hillary Step, a near vertical wall of rock and ice just below the summit, another delay. The line was even worse. Climbers struggling to move, one at a time. Every movement taking more energy than it should. Some had already run out of their supplemental oxygen. Others were running dangerously low. Their minds were becoming clouded, judgment failing. But still, they continued, because the summit was right there, just ahead, visible, almost within reach. And that's the moment Everest becomes its most dangerous. Not at the beginning, not halfway up, but when you are close enough to believe you can still make it. That's when people stop thinking clearly. That's when they ignore everything they were taught. Turnaround times, safety limits, the strange color of the sky. None of it matters anymore. Only the summit. Rob Hall, the experienced guide, knew the rule better than anyone. Turn back at 2 p.m., no matter what. He had enforced it for years, but he stayed longer, waiting for a client who was struggling. Others did too, pushing past the deadline. And that decision changed everything, because when they finally reached the top, it was already too late. Not to climb up, but to survive the descent. They stood on the roof of the world. A moment of triumph, but the shadows were long. The sun was low, and then the mountain changed. The wind picked up, a low growl becoming a roar. The temperature dropped violently. The perfect blue sky vanished, replaced by a wall of swirling gray cloud. Visibility disappeared. A storm, which had been gathering silently all day, was finally unleashed. And now they had to go down. The descent should have been fast, direct, controlled, following their own footprints back to the safety of camp. But nothing was working anymore. The wind raced the path. Blinding snow covered every trace. Familiar landmarks disappeared into the whiteout. And in the death zone, you don't get a second chance. Some climbers got separated from their groups. Others couldn't see more than a few feet ahead. Voices were lost in the wind, swallowed by the storm. And then, people started collapsing. Not from a fall, not from an impact, from simple, absolute exhaustion. At that altitude, in that cold, your body begins to shut down. Slowly, silently. Some sat down in the snow just to rest for a minute, and never stood up again. Others kept moving, but in the wrong direction. Wandering in circles, lost in the storm. One of the guides, Rob Hall, was still near the summit. He had stayed behind, a final act of loyalty, trying to help a client who couldn't move. They were exposed, alone, trapped. His radio was still working, barely. He called down to base camp for help, but no one could reach him. The storm was too violent. Then, they patched through one last call to his pregnant wife in New Zealand. His last words, a whisper across the world. "I love you. Sleep well, my sweetheart." And that was it. But not everyone died that day. Some survived, in ways that shouldn't have been possible. One of them was already given up for dead. Beck Weathers. He had collapsed, lost in the storm with a group of others. His team, believing he was gone, had been forced to leave him behind. Because at that altitude, in those conditions, saving the living is all that matters. Hours passed, temperatures dropped to unimaginable lows. His body froze, his face completely covered in a mask of ice, his hands frozen solid, but somehow, deep inside, he woke up. He opened his eyes to a world of white, alone, disoriented, half blind from the altitude. He understood he had been left for dead, and still, he started walking. No guidance, no direction, just a primal instinct to live. Step after agonizing step after step, until by some miracle, he staggered into the lights of Camp 4. Alive. He shouldn't have survived, but he did. Others weren't so lucky. 8 climbers died in the storm. Many of their bodies are still there today, frozen in time, preserved by the cold. Some became landmarks on the trail. Green Boots was one for years. Climbers still passed them, on the way up and on the way down. A silent, chilling reminder of what happened and what can still happen, because Everest hasn't changed. Even today, people still die there, not because they don't know the risks, but because they believe they can beat them. Long lines now form near the summit, crowds of people at 8,000 meters, people waiting in traffic jams just like before, running out of oxygen just like before, and making the same decisions again and again and again, because the mountain doesn't learn. And sometimes, neither do we. Reaching the top was never the real goal. Coming back down is, because on Everest, the difference between success and death is one decision. And sometimes, you only realize which one you made when it's already too late.